The enigma of I. Close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself, who am I? What is this I that experiences the world, that thinks, feels, and remembers? Is it a constant, unchanging core at the center of your being? Or is it something more fluid, perhaps even an illusion? This question, what is the self, is one of the most fundamental and persistent inquiries in human history. It lies at the heart of philosophy, psychology, and countless spiritual traditions. Our sense of self shapes our entire existence, our relationships, our choices, and our understanding of our place in the cosmos. Today, we embark on a profound exploration of this I. We'll journey through diverse landscapes of thought, from the confident assertions of Western philosophers who sought to define an enduring self, to the radical counter-perspectives from the East, particularly the Buddhist concept of Anatman, or no self. We will also examine what modern psychology and neuroscience contribute to this ancient debate. Does science find a self in the brain, or does it point towards a more complex, constructed reality? Our aim is not to provide a single, definitive answer to what the self is, but to illuminate the multifaceted nature of this question. We will explore the arguments, the evidence, and the transformative implications of different views on the self. By understanding these perspectives, we might not only gain intellectual insight, but also discover new ways of experiencing ourselves and the world. The Western quest for an enduring self. Our Western journey often begins with René Descartes and his famous declaration, cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. For Descartes, the very act of doubting his own existence proved that he, as a thinking thing, residential cogitans, must exist. This I for Descartes was a non-physical, mental substance, a soul, distinct from the physical body. It was unitary, indivisible, and the seat of consciousness and identity. This dualistic view provided a foundation for an enduring, immaterial self that could potentially survive the death of the body. The Cartesian self is intuitive for many. We feel like a singular, conscious agent. But it also raises questions. If the self is non-physical, how does it interact with the physical world? And is this thinking self truly unchanging? John Locke offered a different perspective. He argued that personal identity, what makes you over time, consists not in an unchanging substance, soul, or body, but in the continuity of consciousness, specifically memory. You are the same person you were yesterday because you remember being that person, you remember your past thoughts and experiences. If your consciousness could be transferred to a different body, Locke suggested, your self would go with it. Conversely, if you lost all memory of your past, in what sense would you be the same person? Locke's view ties the self to psychological states, making it more dynamic. However, it faces challenges. What about forgotten memories? Or false memories? Does our identity flicker in and out of existence with the ebb and flow of memory? David Hume, a staunch empiricist, took a more radical and skeptical turn. When he introspected, looking for this self, he found no single, stable impression of it. Instead, he found only a stream of individual perceptions, thoughts, feelings, sensations, succeeding each other in a constant flux. Hume famously concluded that the self is nothing but a bundle or collection of different perceptions, which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and are in a perpetual flux and movement. The idea of a permanent, unified self, for Hume, was a kind of fiction, a habit of mind, not something directly experienced. Hume's bundle theory is a profound challenge to the notion of an enduring self. If he's right, then the I we feel so strongly is more like a rapidly changing kaleidoscope than a solid diamond. Immanuel Kant, responding to Hume's skepticism, proposed a transcendental ego. Kant agreed that we don't experience the self as an object among other perceptions. However, He argued that a unified consciousness is a necessary condition for having any coherent experience at all. For us to experience a world of objects ordered in space and time, and for us to recognize our thoughts as our thoughts, there must be a unifying principle, a transcendental self that synthesizes these experiences. This self is not something found in experience, but is what makes experience possible. Kant distinguishes between the empirical self, the self we observe in ourselves, with its changing states, and this deeper, transcendental self. This offers a way to acknowledge both the flux of experience and the unity of consciousness. Later philosophical movements, like existentialism, emphasize the self as something not given, but created. Jean-Paul Sartre's dictum, "Existence precedes essence," means we are born without a predefined nature. We define ourselves through our choices and actions. The self is a project, a continuous act of becoming, for which we are radically free and responsible. Narrative theories of the self, proposed by philosophers like Daniel Dennett and Paul Ricoeur, suggest that our sense of self is constructed like a story. We are the protagonists of our own autobiographies, constantly weaving together our experiences, memories, and aspirations into a coherent narrative. The self is the center of this narrative gravity, a useful fiction that gives our lives meaning and coherence. The self in psychology and neuroscience. Psychology, too, has grappled extensively with the concept of self. Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory introduced the ego, das Ich, as the part of the psyche that mediates between the primal desires of the ID, the moralistic demands of the superego, and the constraints of external reality. The Freudian ego is responsible for self-preservation, decision-making, and reality testing. Much of its functioning and the conflicts it manages are unconscious. Carl Jung, a student of Freud, expanded on the idea of the self, viewing it as an archetype of wholeness and the central organizing principle of the psyche. For Jung, the self, capital S, encompasses both conscious and unconscious aspects, including the ego, the shadow, our repressed side, and the persona, our social mask. The journey of individuation is the lifelong process of integrating these aspects to realize this deeper self. Humanistic psychology, with figures like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, offered a more optimistic view. They emphasized the actualizing tendency, an innate drive within each individual to develop their capacities and realize their full potential. Rogers focused on the self-concept, our perceptions and beliefs about ourselves, and the importance of congruence between our real self, who we actually are, and our ideal self, who we want to be. Unconditional positive regard from others was seen as crucial for healthy self-development. Maslow's hierarchy of needs culminates in self-actualization, where individuals achieve their unique potential and experience peak moments of fulfillment. Social psychology highlights how our sense of self is profoundly shaped by our interactions with others and our social environment. We learn about ourselves through feedback from others, the looking glass self, by comparing ourselves to others, and through our group memberships, social identity. Our self-presentation, how we manage our appearance and behavior to create certain impressions, also plays a key role. The self, from this perspective, is not a solitary entity, but a dynamic product of social life. Neuroscience seeks to understand the brain mechanisms underlying our sense of self. Researchers have identified various brain regions and networks that are active during self-referential processing, self-awareness, agency, the feeling of being in control of our actions, and autobiographical memory. The default mode network, DMN, for example, is a network of brain regions that is active when we are engaged in internally focused thought, such as mind-wandering, remembering the past, or thinking about the future, all activities closely linked to our sense of self. Studies of patients with brain damage, e.g., those with depersonalization disorder, where the sense of self is disrupted, or split-brain patients provide further clues. However, neuroscience has not found a single, localized self-center in the brain. Instead, the current understanding suggests that our sense of self is an emergent property, a complex construction arising from the integrated activity of multiple brain systems. It's a process, not a thing, a pattern of activity, not a fixed entity. The Eastern Revolution, Anatman, the wisdom of no self. While many Western traditions sought to define and locate an enduring self, a revolutionary perspective emerged from the East, most notably in Buddhism, the doctrine of Anatman, in Sanskrit, or anatta, in Pali, meaning no self or not self. This is not merely a denial of a soul in the Western sense, but a profound insight into the fundamental nature of existence. Anatman is one of the three marks of existence in Buddhism, alongside anicca, impermanence, and dukkha, suffering or unsatisfactoriness. Buddhism analyzes the individual into 5 aggregates or skandhas, Pali, khandhas, that constitute what we conventionally call a person: form/matter, rupa, feelings/sensations, vedana, perceptions/discriminations, sana, mental formations/volitions, sakra, and consciousness, vaya. The crucial insight is that none of these aggregates, individually or collectively, constitute a permanent, independent, unchanging self. They are all impermanent, constantly arising and passing away, and dependently originated. This self we cling to is a conceptual overlay, a label applied to this dynamic, interdependent process. It's vital to distinguish the Buddhist concept of Anatman from the Hindu concept of Atman. Many schools of Hinduism, particularly Advaita Vedanta, posit an Atman, or true self, which is eternal, unchanging, and ultimately identical with Brahman, the absolute reality. Buddhism, in contrast, explicitly denies such an eternal, substantial self. The Buddha taught that clinging to the idea of a permanent Atman is a source of suffering, as it creates a false sense of separation and fuels attachment and aversion. So, while Hinduism often seeks to realize the true self, Atman, Buddhism seeks to realize the truth of no self, Anatman. To see through the illusion of a fixed, independent I. Why is this teaching of no self so central to Buddhism? Because the illusion of a permanent, separate self is seen as the root cause of dukkha, suffering. When we believe in a solid I, we become preoccupied with protecting and enhancing it. This leads to craving, aversion, attachment, fear, anxiety, and conflict. We cling to what we perceive as mine and resist change and loss. By understanding and experientially realizing Anatman, by seeing that there is no fixed self to protect or aggrandize, the grip of the ego loosens. This insight can lead to a profound sense of freedom, peace, compassion, and interconnectedness with all beings. It's important to note that Anatman doesn't mean that nothing exists or that we don't exist conventionally. We function in the world, make choices, and have responsibilities. But at an ultimate level, there is no inherent, independently existing self-entity. Taoism, too, often emphasizes a self that is fluid and interconnected with the Tao, the natural order of the universe. Egoic striving is seen as counterproductive, and practices like Wu Wei, non-action, or effortless action encourage letting go of a rigid sense of self. Living without a fixed self, implications, and conclusion. We've journeyed through vastly different conceptions of the self, from the enduring soul of Descartes to Hume's bundle of perceptions, from the constructed narrative self to the Buddhist insight of Anatman. Is there any way to reconcile these views? Perhaps the self is a multi-layered phenomenon. There's the conventional, functional self that navigates daily life, the psychological self with its memories and personality, and perhaps a deeper awareness that is less defined by content and more by pure presence. Neuroscience suggests the self is a useful, ongoing construction by the brain. The practical implications of understanding no self, or a more fluid self, are significant. It can lead to reduced suffering, as less attachment to a fixed identity can mean less anxiety about protecting or validating that identity, and greater acceptance of change and impermanence. Realizing our interconnectedness and the constructed nature of self and other can foster increased compassion. Being less bound by rigid self-concepts, we may feel freer to grow, change, and respond more spontaneously to life. Regarding ethical considerations, if there's no permanent self, what about moral responsibility? Most traditions that emphasize no self still uphold ethical principles, often grounding them in karma, causal action, and the interconnectedness of all beings. Ultimately, the nature of the self may remain a profound mystery, open to ongoing exploration rather than final definition. Perhaps the most valuable outcome of this inquiry is not to arrive at a definitive answer, but to become more aware of how we construct and experience our own sense of I. Practices like mindfulness and meditation, often associated with Eastern traditions, offer experiential pathways to investigate the nature of self, to observe the arising and passing of thoughts and feelings without automatically identifying with them as a fixed me. So who are you? Perhaps the answer is not a noun, but a verb. Not a static entity, but a dynamic process, a continuous unfolding. By questioning the nature of I, we open ourselves to a richer, more expansive understanding of ourselves and our connection to the vastness of existence. What are your thoughts on the nature of the self? Which perspectives resonate most with you? Share your reflections in the comments below. If you found this exploration of the mind-body problem insightful, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, The Noble Wisdom Path, for more deep dives into life's big questions, and hit the notification bell. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of what it means to be a thinking, feeling, living being.